The Hong Kong Stock Exchange halted trading of Next Digital, parent company of Hong Kong's anti-Chinese Communist Party newspaper, Apple Daily, on May 15 after authorities froze assets belonging to its founder, jailed media tycoon Jimmy Lai. Lai owns 71% of Next Digital, making him its controlling shareholder. The seizure was executed under the Beijing-installed national security law, which critics say is aimed at stamping out dissent in the former democracy. Assets frozen include all of Lai's shares in Next Digital as well as holdings in 3 other firms, totaling $64 million. Hong Kong's increasingly Beijing-betrothed government seized 3 domestic bank accounts owned by Lai, said Hong Kong's Secretary for Security, John Lee, in a government statement. According to SCMP, in court, the 73-year-old Lai blew a kiss from the dock towards the public gallery. Lai is already serving a 14-month sentence on trumped-up charges resulting from taking part in what the party determined to be an unauthorised assembly. Next Digital CEO Chung Kim-hung was in court to support Lai. Concern for the erosion of the freedom of press in Hong Kong were met with dismissal by Lee, who denied that it was an attack on press freedom. The action that we have taken is acting in accordance with the laws to tackle crimes that are endangering national security. It's not directly related to journalism, he claimed to reporters Monday. It is illegal activities that we are dealing with. It is not press work. In regard to timing for my issuing of notices, I will issue it when I have reasonable suspicion that the power should be exercised, he said. Nearly 500 million Hong Kong dollars worth of Lai's assets have been frozen in a move that marks the first such use of the NSL in Asia's financial heart, and the blow raises questions about Next Digital's survival as a company. Taiwanese representatives vehemently denounced the decision by the CCP-controlled city to freeze Lai's wealth. Taiwan's Mainland Affairs Council said in a statement sent to Reuters, the asset seizure undermines the threat the NSL poses to citizens' personal property. It is equivalent to announcing to the international community that Hong Kong's business risks are increasing, the council said. We also once again call on relevant parties to stop suppressing Hong Kong Democrats, otherwise they will drift away from popular sentiment. Last week, the Taiwan arm of Apple Daily announced it would halt print production, accusing the Chinese Communist Party of blocking advertising revenue and creating adversarial business conditions. On Monday, Lai and 9 other prominent activists pleaded guilty to charges of taking part and organising an unauthorised National Day assembly during massive demonstrations calling for the expulsion of the Communist Party that rocked Hong Kong 2 years ago. The NSL, seen by opponents as a threat to Hong Kong's freedoms and autonomy, punishes anything the communist regime labels an act of subversion, secession, collusion with foreign forces, and terrorism against China's one-party state, with consequences as severe as life imprisonment. The demonstrations constituted the strongest challenge to Communist Party rule since the student protests, which ended in the June 4 Tiananmen Square massacre. Lai, who has been one of the most outspoken campaigners for democracy in Hong Kong, stands accused of charges such as so-called colluding with foreign forces and for allegedly encouraging the US to impose sanctions on Hong Kong. Dozens of CCP officials in mainland China and Hong Kong were sanctioned by the Trump administration for the suppression of pro-democracy protests last year. In January, the United States announced sanctions against 6 officials responsible for the implementation of the NSL, following mass arrests of activists. The Facebook Journalism Project is partnered with the International Centre for Journalists, ICFJ, an entity who sponsors China's Tsinghua University, a Chinese Communist Party training ground for the regime's propaganda organs that openly teaches what it calls Marxist journalism. The ICFJ was found to be a corporate sponsor for Tsinghua's Master of Arts Global Business Journalism program in an investigation by National Pulse, along with Bloomberg, Merrill Lynch and an entity which funds Facebook's phalanx of demagogue fact-checkers Night Group. In the Dean's address on Tsinghua University's China-located website, the school's leader advocates openly for applying Marxism theory of struggle to mutate journalism away from its traditional standard as a factually accurate public estate and towards a propaganda machine. We should be committed to firm and correct political orientation. Our school has been actively exploring the theory and practices of Marxist journalism. The Dean also says the so-called Marxist journalism should be used for applying the Marxist theory in observing the world, selecting and handling news production. The networking page of the university's website also shows Facebook's Vice President of Human Resources and Recruiting, Laurie Goller, was a guest lecturer in 2017 alongside names such as CNN's Fareed Zakaria. The Facebook Journalism Project describes itself as an entity which works with publishers around the world to strengthen the connection between journalists and the communities they serve. The project does this through visiting newsrooms and offer online courses to train journalists on how to leverage social tools to tell stories that matter, and by partnerships with news publishers and non-profits to combat misinformation, promote news literacy, fund new initiatives, share best practices and improve journalism on our platforms. The project's partner, ICFJ, is known for its support for Tsinghua's journalism program. A 2013 post on the ICFJ's website is gushing in its praise for Tsinghua over placement of graduates both at high-level CCP propaganda mouthpieces and big multinational corporations. Graduates are working at media such as China Daily, South China Morning Post, People's Daily, Economic Observer, Bloomberg News, China Securities Journal, Korean Broadcasting System, Xinhua News Agency, China Central Television, Global Times, Radio Beijing and China Radio International, as well as multinationals such as Deloitte, Ogilvy and Mather, Saatchi & Saatchi, Shell, Sony Ericsson and IBM. The post focuses on collaboration between the ICFJ and the East-West Institute, EWI. On page 47 of the EWI's 2011 annual report, the Institute thanks CCP United Front Work Department organ, the China-United States Exchange Foundation, for providing funding. The China-United States Exchange Foundation is a generous supporter of EWI's Strategic Trust Building Initiative, in particular the area of US-China relations. EWI also says on its Strategic Trust Building page, the organisation received the generous support of the China-United States Exchange Foundation and other private donors, and was organised in close partnership with the China Association for International Friendly Contact to participate in the US-China Sanya Initiative Dialogue in Beijing in 2018. The connection to the CUSEF is especially significant after a January investigation discovered through Foreign Agents Registration Act filings that US public relations firm BLJ Worldwide had been representing the foundation for many years in its efforts to co-opt many of the biggest names in journalism, such as New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, CNN and the Associated Press, with perks such as luxury trips to mainland China. Analysis by Data Reportal uncovered Facebook is a bustling hub for Beijing's community organisation and social influencing schemes. In early April, Facebook came under fire when it was found to be publishing whitewash ads paid for by Communist Party propaganda outlets in an attempt to discredit and deflect pressure away from fallout over the mounting scandal resulting from the regime's genocide of Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang. In one case, Xinhua paid $100 to air an ad that was displayed to 200,000 people before it was removed. In another, CGTN paid $400 for an ad that targeted India, Pakistan and Bangladesh. It was viewed over 1 million times in 4 days before being removed, research found. 4 of the regime's propaganda outlets, CGTN, People's Daily, China Daily and Xinhua, sit in the top 20 largest Facebook pages in existence. India is the platform's largest advertising audience, eclipsing the United States by a nearly 2.1 ratio, while the most active city on Facebook in the world is Dhaka, Bangladesh. Meanwhile, a member of the independent Facebook Oversight Board, which recently upheld the platform's ban on Donald Trump after the January 6 Capitol riots, former Danish Prime Minister Helle Thorning-Schmidt also has a connection to the Communist Party's United Front. Thorning-Schmidt gave a speech in 2017 at the Chinese People's Association for Friendship with Foreign Countries in Beijing, where her charity Save the Children was praised by the CCP for working together with related government and institutions for years to bring the most advanced medical technologies to China. A former 58-year-old rheumatology professor and researcher at Ohio State University, Songguo Zheng, has been sentenced to 37 months in federal prison for appropriating federal research grants to aid China's scientific pursuits, the US Department of Justice announced May 14. Zheng was arrested last May in Anchorage, Alaska, as he prepared to board a chartered flight to China in an attempt to flee the United States. He pleaded guilty in November 2020 and admitted to lying on National Institute of Health grant applications to secure approximately $4.1 million in order to help China develop its expertise in the areas of rheumatology and immunology. Stealing is stealing, but stealing at the behest of a foreign government's concerted effort to pilfer our nation's innovations and technology takes things to a new and significantly worse level, said Acting U.S. Attorney Vipal J. Patel for the Southern District of Ohio. China has a program called the Thousand Talents Plan, which is the Chinese Communist Party's drive to recruit science talent for its own technological advancement, as well as to steal intellectual property from rival countries and research institutions. US officials say that the Thousand Talents Plan serves as an illegal conduit for the transfer of US research and expertise to Chinese entities. Prosecutors stated that Zheng had been participating in the plan since 2013 and used research conducted in the US to benefit the Chinese government's own research ambitions. Zheng managed a team of scientists conducting autoimmune research at the OSU as well as the Pennsylvania State University. Court documents state that while employed at OSU, Zheng was also working at the third affiliated hospital at Sun Yat-sen University, a state-controlled school in southern China's Guangdong province, as reported by the Epoch Times. The university's now defunct homepage named him as an expert under the Thousand Talents Plan. Sources state that before residing in Ohio, Zheng also worked at the University of Southern California as well as Penn State University. Assistant Director Alan E. Cochler Jr. of the FBI's Counterintelligence Division said, "For years, the defendant concealed his participation in Chinese government talent recruitment programs, hiding his affiliations with at least 5 research institutions in China." Zheng failed to disclose this conflict of interest, among others, to his US employers as well as the NIH. Special Agent in Charge Lamont Pugh III for the US Department of Health and Human Services Office of Inspector General stated that reporting potential conflicts of interest when seeking grant funding from the National Institutes of Health is imperative in ensuring the public's trust in the research being conducted and how it is utilized. He continued, making false statements to conceal potential conflicts violates that trust and the law. In yet another case involving the Chinese government's Thousand Talents program, Songguo Zheng will spend the next 37 months in a federal prison because he chose to lie and hide his involvement in this program from US research funding agencies, stated Attorney General John C. Demers for the Justice Department's National Security Division. In addition to his prison time, Zheng has been ordered to pay restitution of more than $3.4 million to the NIH, as well as approximately $413,000 to the OSU. Authorities had confiscated 2 laptops, 3 cell phones, several USB drives, several silver bars, expired Chinese passports for his family, deeds for property in China and other items of Zheng at the time of his arrest, according to the DOJ. This case is but one among numerous federal actions targeting CCP affiliates who covertly collaborate with Chinese institutions while receiving research funding from US taxpayers. One other example is Yu Xiaorong, a Chinese-born American citizen, was recently convicted for stealing $120 million worth of US trade secrets from Coca-Cola, as well as other companies.